So the first thing we're going to do for this basic setup is I'm just going to have Joe put his hands on my torso just like he's got them, and he's not going to be like really friendly with this. He's going to give me like a tiny bit of pressure and keep me honest in the movement, okay? And this is a variation on an old push-pull setup. So the first grip I want you to get is I want you to get a grip on the wrist, and you're going to do this in such a way where your thumb is poking yourself like right in the hip or the ribs. If you do it this way, for me this always feels like very jammed up on my wrist. I want you to do this instead, okay? The next grip, we're going to get a collar tie with this hand. But if you try to sit up, especially on somebody who's a little taller, if you try to sit straight up and get a collar tie here, they'll sometimes push you down, and it's like kind of hard to get there. So what I want you to do is just get on the side of your hip, the same side you grab the wrist, just get on your side. And it gets a lot easier to sit up and gives you a little more slack with this arm. So now I've got my collar tie, I've got my wrist grip, okay? So my end goal here is to break his posture down and also take this wrist and stuff it to his belly button. The problem with this is obviously he's going to be planted, he's going to be resisting me. So as I stuff this toward his belly button, I want you to shift your hips aggressively from left to right to left to right, okay? So I'm on my left hip bone right now. I'm going to shift to my right and then back to my left and then back to my right. And as you can see, it's very effective in forcing that arm down, okay? So once I feel his wrist getting close to his belly button, I'm going to time it, clear his elbow, jump over his shoulder with this leg, and close my triangle position. Now, like I said, I will admit, this setup works at like beginner levels, lower levels, but you need simple setups like this against people who don't have really technical grappling. It's simple, it's efficient, and I can get right to my triangle position, okay? So when you get here, some people will be able to actually like close a true figure four with their legs. Most of the time, that's going to be difficult to do, especially if the person is tucking this elbow a little bit. So you have what we call the triangle position, okay? So my feet are crossed, my heels are pinning down, I'm squeezing my knees together. So we've got to the point where we set up to get into the triangle position. Now from here, as we go through the rest of these techniques, the finish is going to be exactly the same, okay? So first order of business when I get here, if he tries to posture up, if he tries to get tall, go ahead and just sit back a little bit. Yeah, if he starts doing this, this can be taxing on my triangle. Come on back down, please. So the first thing I want to do is, if I feel the person trying to do that, I want to go not to the back of the head, because strong people will still push right through this. I want you to go to the top, like the crown of the head right here. And you're going to tire out the person's neck as they try to posture up. You're going to keep them broken down. Once you feel them wear out, next order of business is passing this arm across. So I'm going to get a 2-on-1 grip. Doesn't matter how you configure your 2-on-1. Yes and no. Okay, what I want you to do for today is I want you to get an arm lock style grip. Over. So we both have the same grip on the tricep. We're going to pass the arm across. But if I just try to pass it right now and he's like resisting me, it'll be sticky. It won't go. So what I have to do is I have to pin my heels down, raise my hip really high. That helps free the arm. I can pass it across and drop my hip back down. So now that elbow is trapped between my hip bone and my rib cage. It's called, like I call it like the hip pocket. It's trapped in the hip pocket now. So it's going to be harder for him to get it back across. So step 1 is break the posture. Step 2, pass the arm. Step 3, I'm going to grab my shin, but in a very specific way. So I'm going to sort of like push his head a little deeper into the triangle as I grab my shin closer to my knee. And I'm doing that so I can unlock while keeping this knee tight to the shoulder. And I'm going to put this foot on the hip, on the floor, or on the tip of the knee, wherever you feel you can get a good angle change. Okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my angle going from 0 degrees looking at the top of his head to 90 degrees looking into the ear. So when you get here, you're going to lock your triangle, but I'm not going to let go of my shin. And this foot here is really important. No ballerina foot, so that means no straight toes. I want to make a fish hook there so I can lock my knee over this section of my shin. So I'm going to raise my hip, lock it clean, and I'm going to try to keep the squeeze low here so I can explain without Joe having to tap, okay? To finish this, I want you to pull your shin down. It's kind of a substitute for pulling the head. I want you to pin your heels down, and I want you to squeeze your knees together, like you're trying to bring the insides of your knees together. With all this squeezing, most people will tap. I do like to let go of this arm at the very end and dive under this leg to finish my angle change. I'm going to get my tap. Okay? So a lot of steps there. But the finish now, from here on out for the rest of the class, is going to go just like that. The setups are just going to vary a little bit. So once again, wrist grip, angle off to your hip, grip on his neck. Okay? Now we're going to do that hip shifting. He's going to plant his hands kind of firm. He's going to keep me honest. He's not going to make it super easy for me to stuff it down. And I go from my left hip to my right, and again, and again, and again. And the more aggressive and violent you can be with that, the easier it's going to be to stuff the wrist down, okay? Now, as I get it close to his stomach, I jump over the shoulder, and I trap my triangle position, okay? Heel spin, knee squeeze. Now we go through those steps, okay? This is sort of like step 0 for me. This is always just make sure the posture's broken, okay? Now step 1, pass the arm, grab the shin, foot on the hip, change the angle, lock and squeeze as I let go of the arm finally because it's trapped in that hip pocket and I can dive under for my final angle change. I'm gonna get my tap. Any questions on this? I think almost everybody saw it the other day. Okay, yeah, question.
What if they hide their arm? Like, what's the best way to get it?
So we'll put that in our. Actually, we can do that now. Man, there's a lot to do there. Do you know the omoplata? Do you like the omoplata? You do, right? Okay, that's good. All right, so I would say that that's like definitely the path of least resistance if the person does hide their arms. So let me get to this point here. So what we're talking about is, and I'm showing it on the opposite side now. It's important to note that, okay? So he hides this arm from me because I want to pass it across, right? It's hidden now. So what I would do in this situation is I would angle him to the other side. So you can use your hand, you can use your form. You want to frame him out, chop across the back here. I'm going to get to this position. And if you've done our arm lock series before, this will look really familiar. This scissor blade chopping motion, you remember this, right? So I'm basically doing the exact same thing to achieve the same type of angle. It's just with a different technique. So he hides the arm from me. I'm going to push his face out of the way. I'm going to chop across the back as you see this leg flare out straight. We're going to get to this position. Okay, and from here, it should be relatively hard for him to square up, but still, I'm gonna just keep moving through the technique. So all I'm gonna do from here is just loop this leg around his head. I'm either gonna give him a back of the knee to the face. If he's resisting more, sometimes I'll put my foot in the person's neck and kick him through, but you'll get to your omoplata then, okay? We'll talk about some of the common problems with this first setup. The main one is just awareness of the person on top. Like I said, it is a more beginner level setup. Once you grab the person's wrist, even if you make the collar tie, even if you do a really good job shifting that hand down, most of the time if you shoot this well against people who know what they're doing, the hand gets trapped inside. So like this happens, he keeps his hand in there, right? And so like this can obviously be uncomfortable, painful, plus it can leave a gap where I'm not gonna be able to choke him very well, okay? So if this does happen, a lot of times you'll just see people unlock, okay? But if he's newer to jiu-jitsu and I throw this thing up and his wrist gets trapped in there, he'll just pull it out. Most people don't know any better. Now he's put himself in a triangle, okay? So I just wanna address that. Now this next setup is much more functional at a more advanced level. This is my favorite triangle setup for gi or no gi, okay? So the grip is gonna change a little bit. I like to make an elbow tricep grip here. This is my favorite grip in this position. And then we're gonna do the same thing with the person's neck. We're gonna grab that collar tie, okay? So once again, to grab that, if he's sitting tall, just shift toward your grip, shift your hip, and then you have more length to sit up and grab his neck and break him down, okay? So when you get to this position, the same side that I grab the person's neck, you're gonna put the foot on the hip or the floor. Usually for this one, whatever reason, the floor is a little bit better. And I'm gonna hip escape away about a medium distance, okay? So once I do this, I'm gonna loop my inside leg all the way around, and then I'm gonna bring it down across his arm. And I'm gonna move his head and my arm out of the way so you can see exactly what I've done. I want this to look like this, okay? So my knee is on the far side of his chest, my shin is cutting across his bicep, okay? And I will have him broken down like this. So the whole goal of this, of me moving my shin across his chest like this, is to use it as a battering ram to punch his arm out. I don't want this arm involved, okay? So I'm gonna pull on his neck, I'm gonna pull on that tricep grip. I'm gonna just sort of keep this leg engaged. I wanna keep him kind of close to me. And then I'm gonna push my entire shin forward as I arch back. And I wanna feel the connection break. I don't wanna feel his hand on my chest anymore or hand on my hip, wherever it was. I wanna go like this, okay? And the person on top should go when you do this, okay? That's what you wanna hear. Otherwise, you're doing it wrong. The most common mistake people make there, if I'm talking about myself, is people will kick, like with their foot, they kick past the arm. And the arm doesn't go anywhere. If I kick past it, it doesn't move. But if I bring this all the way over, pull in his neck, pull in his arm, and move my shin through, it pushes his entire body back a little bit, punches his arm out all the way. I'm using my leg and my hip to force his arm out. So now from this position, I'm gonna start using my opposite leg to help me pivot more square. I shoot my leg, raise my hip, and I bite the back of his neck. I'm sorry, the side of his neck, okay? And I close my triangle position. Now from this point, everything is the exact same way as it was before, okay? We keep the posture broken, pass the arm, grab the shin, foot in the hip, change the angle, lock and squeeze. I wanna talk about why we do some of those things, okay? Because somebody asked about the stack counter, okay? So why do we pass the arm? We pass the arm because it gives me better control, but more importantly, what you can see if I unlock here, my leg is choking him on the right side. It seems kind of obvious, but when I pass his arm across, his shoulder starts to choke him on this side. That's what's choking him. That's why we have to pass it. I could lock the cleanest triangle in the world here, but if he tucks his elbow and he brings that shoulder away from his neck, it's going to be very difficult to choke him from here. So that's why it's so important to pass that across. So move that back across, okay? So why do we grab the shin? We grab the shin so I'm free to unlock my triangle but still maintain my control, okay? I want to unlock to, make angle adjustments, maybe do some different attacks, but if I'm not holding the shin, it's impossible for me to do that and control him at the same time, okay? So I grab the shin so I can unlock, put my foot on the hip, floor, or the tip of the knee, and change my angle. Okay, so why am I changing my angle? I'm going to move just a little bit to illustrate this point. The reason I'm changing my angle is because it'll give me a stronger squeeze for the finish, but also one of you asked about the stack, okay? So if I get to a point where I've got a triangle locked up, I've passed the arm, I grab the shin, I put my foot on the hip, I'm about to cut my angle. Look, if I don't cut my angle and we're head to head here and he stacks in, go ahead and start stacking. Yep, exactly, keep coming. This is starting to really hurt my neck and I feel like I have to open up to alleviate the pressure, okay? But if you're really, really diligent with your steps, if you pass the arm, grab the shin, foot on the hip, as he stacks in, which a lot of people do, I'll change the angle, keep stacking in, Joe, and I'll get the hell out of the way, okay? So now he's stacking this way, but my neck is now offline, so I'm not experiencing all that pressure that I was before. And if he continues to stack in, go ahead, he's just gonna knock himself over, okay? Then I can either finish my triangle or more commonly pass the leg around and finish the straight arm lock. So we're gonna go back to the triangle position, and I'm gonna have to, I don't know if Joe knows this counter, so I'm gonna have to kind of walk him through it, but sometimes you'll get here, maybe you'll even have already passed the arm across, and you start to lock up your triangle. You'll get people who do this really sort of like intelligent stack, where they'll put their hands on your knees, go ahead and put both hands on my knee, exactly. Now drive my knee to the floor, put all your weight on it over here. This happens a lot, okay? Now this, the bigger the person is on top, this can get extremely uncomfortable to the point where your legs will wear out, and your triangle will open, and then they have opportunities to pass your guard. So people ask, what do you do in this situation? So let's go ahead and replicate that again. Go ahead and grab the knee. Go ahead and drive all your weight towards it. Yeah, this sucks. So what I'll look for, it doesn't really matter, at least to me, that my triangle comes undone here, but I have to keep my legs engaged so you can't pass. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look, head up just a little bit. I'm gonna look for this opening on the bottom of his hand, like this wrist here. I'm gonna take both, go back down the floor. I'm gonna take both my hands, and even if I have to kind of bridge and raise my hip a little bit, I'm gonna try to find the side of his hand. Once I sneak my fingers under the side of his hand, I'm pretty sure that I'm gonna be able to finish this shoulder lock. So what I'll do is, if right now if I can see his shoulder, I'm just gonna sort of reconfigure my guard, just sort of reclose it, where like my knee starts to cover his shoulder and clamp down over it. Now I can start to peel everything up toward that knee. So I'm gonna peel his wrist up this way, and I'm gonna hit the shoulder lock. You gotta go, yep, that's it. You gotta go super slow because it's really, really effective. Now, I will admit that this is very dependent on how he configures his grip and then also how strong he is. Sometimes the person's just got their grip configured in a way where I can't get on, they're just too damn strong. So if that's the case, what I'm gonna do instead, if I can't dig out his hand, I'm gonna wrap around his head here. I'm gonna wrap around his head on this side, and it looks like I'm trying to crank his neck and choke him. It's possible you could crank the person's neck and tap him out here, but it's not my goal. My goal is to pull him super tight to me, so I can now unlock my triangle and make room for this hand to grab his lat muscle over on this side. And I'm gonna keep my chest really connected to his shoulder. Okay, so I'm obviously starting to work my way around toward his back. Now this part can be a little bit messy, but what I want you to do is I want you to try to pedal to create momentum to build either to your elbow on this side or your hands. So pedal, 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 and jump up. Okay, so I made it to my elbow. That's great. If you make it to your elbow, pedal a little bit more, and then come to your hand. Okay, so now I'm built up here, and I've got to keep my chest super tight to his shoulder, because if I leave room, he'll just move his elbow back across my body and he'll square up. Okay, all right, turn back again, Joe, please. Thank you. So I got to really bow my chest into his shoulder and keep him locked out of this angle. This is the messy part. You have to slowly try to sneak your way around the person's back, and because of the clamp they have in your leg here, there's not a real easy way to do it, okay? But one thing I'll do is I will intentionally leave my bottom leg kind of lazy sometimes, and when people feel that, especially if they haven't experienced this position before, they'll go ahead and just walk over that leg. Go ahead and walk over, and now he's put a hook in for his back, okay? So now from here, it's a matter of basing on the mat, raising my hip, and then trying to spiral around so I can start seat belting and putting my second hook in, okay?